season ended last year in Chicago, and it does this year as well. 33-25 at Soldier Field. New Orleans falls to Chicago, and thus knocking themselves out of playoff contention. Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, alongside NFL.com's Pat Kirwan. Pat, I can't believe it's the end of the season, and for New Orleans, I'm sure they can't either, because they started 0-4, and they're not going to the playoffs. And for the second straight year, it finishes in Chicago. They set some records today. Drew Brees, the most ever completions for a single season. Marcus Colston, most catches for 2 years to start a career. But when it's all said and done, you don't punt to Devin Hester, his sixth return for a touchdown this season, an NFL record.
That's right. And Sean Payton said in the pregame, we're not going to punt to the guy. I've studied the teams that did punt to him. I studied the teams that didn't. We decided not to. The one that he finally got his hands on was right on the boundary. They almost had that one out of bounds. You got to be more decisive putting the ball out of bounds so the guy makes the difference in this football game. But there were other things going on in his football game that were the difference. Kyle Orton inspires his team. We have now talked about it 3 weeks in a row. I think he's 12-6 lifetime as the starting quarterback of this team. He brings an attitude that the rest of that football team is energized by. So he's probably your quarterback next year. The other part is the running back, Adrian Peterson. Let's not fool around with Sed Benson anymore. These guys want to play with Adrian Peterson.
Adrian Peterson last week had over 100 yards, and today he was...
he had 100 yards and 22 touches.
Yeah, and then on the other side, Pierre Thomas for the New Orleans Saints had 230 yards of total offense, rushing and receiving. You've got a lot of running backs here that can go on both sides.
Yeah, and I think when you think about the Saints for a minute, what you're going to do when Reggie Bush comes back, you are never going to fool around with Reggie as the eye tailback again. I think this is the slot player. He'll come motion in the backfield and take some fast sweeps, those kind of things. The things he did early in his career when Deuce was healthy. Because now they know between Stecker and Pierre Thomas, and if Deuce comes back, you got plenty of guys to run the ball inside. So I think they have identified Reggie's role by Reggie being out. They need to fix the defense. They can't stop the pass. And really, they're going to struggle with that. They lost Mike McKenzie. I didn't think they had a chance of winning this game today.
No, you didn't, and you said that on Thursday when we previewed this game here as well. And part of it was because of that and how much you like Kyle Orton. Now, having said that, I know we talked about that the other day. I know you said Kyle Orton's your starting quarterback next year. Are you sure about that?
No, I don't know how the team's going to react. They've tried to keep this guy down, even when he's inspired this team and led it. Why? He doesn't come with any political strength. He wasn't a first-round draft pick. But Grossman's got to get re-signed, and you really are challenged to pay this guy money to come back. If he wants to come back and compete for the job, that's one thing. But right now, and Kyle Orton is not a great player. What he is a great leader. He inspires his team. Watch how Urlacher plays. Lance Brigham, that goal line stand. The quarterback's not on the field, but I promise you this. When they come out of the tunnel to play, and they know Orton's the quarterback, the Bears play better.
And on top of it, let's not forget something from last year. The Packers won 4 straight games. They didn't go to the playoffs last year, but it was a springboard to this season when they're the 2 seed in the NFC. The Bears aren't going to the playoffs, but they won their last 2 games this season convincingly over Green Bay and over New Orleans. Maybe that spring is a springboard for them for next season as well. Meanwhile, New Orleans is the other direction because they lost last week to Philadelphia, and then they lose this week at Chicago. What else on that defense besides the secondary has to change?
Well, you know, they didn't rush the passer very well early in the year. Then they had a spurt where they were getting after the quarterback. But in general, they need to be more dynamic rushing this quarterback off the edges. They're going to need a big middle linebacker, in my mind, to plug up the inside. And you're always short at big defensive tackle. They could use 2 to 3 players in the front 7, and they got to get the corners solved and resolved because without McKenzie, and he's going to have a serious injury here, you're not going to be good enough back there. Remember this, the Saints do score points, and your opponents are going to have to throw to stick around with you in 2008. You've got to get, and I learned this from Bill Walsh. When Bill Walsh had great teams, what he really did was build his nickel defense. Because your offense is going to force your opponent into 3 wide receiver stuff. That's where they got to go.
Well, they have a big guy, Hollis Thomas. I'm not sure he's your guy of the future, though. But he's certainly big. Size, yes.
Big. You and I could go down to the corner and find a couple big guys.
Yeah, well, that's true, too. Put them in pads. We'll see. Maybe they'll play harder. That's a different story. Folks, for more on this game or anything else in Week 17, be sure to stay with CBSSports.com and watch everything else on the CBS Audience Network. It's been a fun season. Saints are sitting home. Bears are sitting home, but at least the Bears are feeling good about themselves.
The Bears feeling pretty good about themselves.
I'd say so as well. Lovie Smith, maybe he'll be taking Super Bowl again next year. For Pat Kirwan, I'm Jason Horowitz. Have a very happy New Year, folks. See you during the playoffs.